I'm Dennis Everson, so you know my name, and you are.
And I'm Randall Phillips.
And Randall, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was some of the health issues that you've been going through and some of the struggles you have with that, victories, issues, and just kind of share with people what it's like, because I know you have to do dialysis, and if someone isn't familiar with that, if they don't have a family member that does it, or if they don't, they hear the word, but they don't really know what that's like. So maybe you could share a little bit about that.
A lot of people are really foggy on what dialysis is. I've heard people say things like, well, aren't you sorry you drank all the time?
Oh, yeah.
Dialysis doesn't have anything to do with alcohol. It's when your kidneys fail, and they can fail for several reasons.
Mm-hmm.
With me, it was a reaction to some new diabetic medicine.
Okay.
That did them in, but there are people who have genetically, it's a genetic thing with their parents,
Mm-hmm.
and they've inherited a genetic problem with their kidneys, and some other things can go on too.
Absolutely.
But basically, what happens is they have to take your blood and run it through a filter that takes out the impurities and the water from whatever Pepsi or whatever you drank that day,
Yeah.
and then returns your blood to you. And it's kind of an involved process. You have to have a access installed, usually in your arm. And
This is something that's permanent, or is this something when you go in?
Well,
it depends on.
it's sort of permanent.
Okay.
I'm on my second access
Okay.
in almost 11 years. So they're not something that just comes and goes.
Sure.
But they do wear out, and you have to have them replaced. But they, through this access, they put two big needles in your arm. One to take the blood out and one to put it back in. And you just sit there and let the machine run for about, in my case, it's 4.5 hours.
Wow.
It varies depending on how big a person you are,
Sure.
and that sort of thing. But for me, it's 4.5 hours, and this happens 3 times a week.
Wow.
So
So that pretty much takes care of that day, I guess, for the most part.
well, considering that you're usually not feeling your best when you come off of the machine, it lowers your blood pressure, and you come off. Most people come off lightheaded, dizzy, kind of nauseous, and just tired.
Well, that
it
makes
wears you
sense.
out.
Yeah.
So it's pretty well eats your day. Your day's pretty well done. On dialysis days, you don't really figure on doing anything else.
Right. Yeah. And that's 3 days a week that you're doing it.
3 days a week, yes.
I guess now, for most people, does it vary depending on, or is it generally around that?
Everybody, just about everybody does 3 days a week.
Yeah.
There are varieties of dialysis that you do. If you're doing home dialysis, for
Mm-hmm.
example, which is the same thing, but it runs a little slower,
Okay.
and you basically hook it up when you go to bed, and you do that 6 days a week,
Oh wow.
and it runs while you're sleeping.
So basically it's replacing what your kidney's not able to do in filtering things out.
It's
and
attempting to replace it.
trying to.
Your natural kidneys do a much better job of cleaning your blood, and of course, they're working all the time instead
Right.
of every other day.
Yeah.
So that's a lot better for your blood pressure and that sort of things.
And then does that affect your diet quite a bit too? Do you have to watch eating, drinking, things like that?
There are specific things that you have to avoid or be very limited with. Dialysis does not do a good job of taking phosphorus or potassium out of your system.
Okay.
Most meats are high in phosphorus.
Yeah.
Most fruits are high in potassium.
Oh yeah.
So you have to, there's, for example, bananas are forbidden.
Yeah, because people, when they want potassium, they go to a banana first thing, is what they think of. Yeah.
There are other things that are high in potassium.
Sure.
But that's one that everyone thinks of. So you have to avoid those, and there are some things that are safer than others. Apples are pretty safe. Celery is pretty safe, things like that. But
Not the most fun food to be eating.
no,
Celery.
and, it's kind of an odd diet because on one hand you have to be very careful about your protein intake. But on the other hand, since you're doing dialysis and you lose blood every time, they want you to have high protein.
Oh, sure.
So, one thing kind of militates against the other.
So now with the ones that it doesn't filter as good, like the potassium, for instance, is there something then you have to do to supplement the dialysis for that, or is it?
Well, with the phosphorus, it does a really poor job with that, and so what you have to do is they give you these pills to take, and you have to take a bunch of them, and you have to take them every time you eat. They're called binders, and what they do is they latch onto the phosphorus in your system and don't let your body absorb it.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, I think people might be familiar with that. They have ones they'll talk about with fat cells or different things that people will try that are supposed to bind with something and take it out. But some of them I don't know are really that
these
legit.
actually
but
do bind with potassium,
right.
and just take it on through your system, so that your body doesn't absorb it.
And then I imagine they're having to test your blood pretty much like all the time when you're doing it, or
Well, they test unless you're having a problem, they test you once a month.
once a month. And
But if you're having some kind of issue, they'll test you
Sure.
more often than that. But yeah, fortunately, they don't have to stick you with yet another needle for that. They can just take the blood out
Right.
of the line that's going through the system.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and like you were saying with kidney failure or issues with the kidney, there's lots of things that can cause that. I know my dad, before he passed away, was having some other issues, and it started to make his kidney sit down. And actually, my mom just yesterday, day before, had gotten dehydrated, and then it made her kidneys getting very sluggish, and they weren't working right, and it was really throwing her off. And I didn't think, like you were saying, a lot of people don't realize there's a lot of things, and for you, medication that you were taking to try to help you be healthy with the diabetes ended up leading to all those complications. So how long have you been dealing with this?
Dealing with the complications in general, 14 years, I guess.
Wow.
But with the dialysis per se, 10 and a half years.
Wow.
Yeah, I worked around it for a while. For a few years, I could, manage it with diet and just being really careful and stuff. But about 11 years ago, I came down with the flu, a really bad case of the flu, and that just finished off, the process anyway.
Yeah, whenever our systems are weak and we're having issues, then something else comes in, and that can really throw things off. And now, I guess the one of the things that, or the only way, I guess, that someone can deal with that, there's really, I don't think they have any way for kidneys to get healthy that are not working that I know of.
It does happen, but it's a really rare thing.
Yeah.
And it's usually somebody who's had their kidneys shut down from some kind of accident or from dehydration.
Something like that.
Yeah, I've known of 2 cases in the 10 years I've been doing it, people whose kidney function returned out of probably 200 people I've known.
And then the other option is, or I guess the main option is
A transplant.
Yeah.
Yeah, so far that's the only other, you either do dialysis or you do a transplant, that's it.
And I know I've watched enough doctor shows or whatever or something, but I know that it's hard for them to find matches with transplants. What is involved with that? What makes it hard to do?
The primary thing is blood types. And if you're A negative and you were to somehow get a transplant of a B positive kidney, your body would reject that. It would be like, it would consider it like a disease, or like a disease germ or something like that.
Foreign cells in your body.
Some foreign something in your body, and it would reject it. So you have to match blood types, and there's some other things that's too scientific for me to understand that have to match. But basically, it's your blood type.
Yeah.
that they look for.
And that can be, tricky in that. But I know you found a place that does some things with transplants that increase
Yes.
the options for
Yeah,
people. Tell us about that.
This is a really neat idea. The transplant facility I'm working with up in Kansas City has a program whereby you can swap kidneys. If you have a living donor, of course, you don't have to be a living donor in these
Right.
situations. If you have a living donor whose blood type doesn't match yours, somebody, a cousin or something that wants to donate a kidney to you, and their blood type doesn't match yours, they can swap that with somebody else who's in a similar situation, whose donor's kidney does match yours.
Yeah.
So that gives you two people who get kidneys that wouldn't have had them otherwise. It's just a great idea.
Yeah, it's I heard about that. It's awesome. It's like, yeah. And then I think, why haven't there been more of this? Why don't
I
they?
don't know if other facilities
Right.
do that or not. I just haven't had any experience with other facilities.
Yeah, I know this one was the first I heard of. I
Yes.
imagine there are some around,
Sure,
but
surely somebody else is not.
yeah, but it's such a great thing because I know a
Yes.
lot of times with kidney donations, it's a relative, a lot of times, or someone very close
Right.
to the family that will do that. But if the blood types don't match or whatever else
Yes.
they're looking at, then this is such a great option where someone else may have a family member or someone that's wanting to donate can't because it doesn't match. Now that increases not only the opportunity to get it, but also increases the ability for someone to donate
Exactly.
that's wanting to help
Exactly.
out. I think that's just awesome. When it comes to donation, I mean, that might be something people wonder about. Well, they're going to need their kidney too, so how does that work?
Well, you can get by just fine on one kidney as long as it's a healthy kidney.
Yeah.
And if it's not a healthy kidney, they won't accept you for it as
Sure.
a donor, of
Right.
course.
Yeah.
So, I guess the good Lord gave us two kidneys on purpose in case one fails. But as long as you have the one kidney, and as I understand it, after you've donated, you have to be a little more careful than normal.
I would imagine, yeah.
But it's not a significant
Sure.
hardship, to get by on just one kidney.
Yeah, I've heard of many people doing it, so yeah.
I suppose that's why they don't have, living heart donors or something.
Right. Yeah, you only got one of those. Right? Yeah, that's neat the way God has set up some things like that.
Yes.
And I guess one of the things that people might wonder too is, I can see where in a situation like yours, it was a medication that caused the kidneys to get damaged. So when it gets replaced, you're not having that same factor that's going
Right.
to damage the new ones. And I'm sure that's something they consider too when they're looking at donors and donations
Yeah,
and things like that.
That's true. You have most recipients have to take what they call immunosuppressants. They're drugs that are designed to make your body's immune system not entirely go away, but
Right.
tamp it down so that it doesn't reject the kidney. Because even with a good match, most people have some rejection
Sure.
issues because it's not yours, and your body figures that out.
Yeah.
So most people who have received an organ of any sort have to take immunosuppressants.
Is that something that you have to do before surgery also?
No.
Do you know? Okay.
No,
It's more after. And
They have to kind of play with it. There's I guess maybe a dozen different
oh, sure. Yeah.
drugs that they use for this, and they have to play around and figure out the ones that work with you. Some people have to take a lot of them,
Yeah.
and some people only have to take one or two in small doses. It just depends on how well your body accepts the organ.
So then, like with a transplant, what is the recovery like? Because I imagine it's going to take some time for the new organ to not be rejected. You have those anti-immune drugs, so you have to be aware of, flus and all those kinds of things that you're more susceptible to.
As I understand it, they require you to stay at home, entirely at home, for a month after you get out of the hospital and stuff, so that you're not around anyone.
And they don't want people coming and visiting and stuff because they want you
can't.
away from all
That's
germs.
That's the whole idea, is that you're supposed to stay away from any kind of bacteria, anything that can make you sick, because you don't have an immunity system.
Sure.
They basically when they first put the organ in, they basically kill your immune system, and
Yeah.
it has to come back. You know?
Yeah.
So you're at home for a good while. This is not a minor surgery.
Right.
It's a big surgery, about as big as they get. So you're going to have just from the surgery itself, you're going to have a recovery curve. But most people, once they get over the recovery time and get their immunity back up, live a pretty normal life.
Yeah.
There are situations you can get into, that they say you really shouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't be mud wrestling maybe.
Right.
Something like that. But you can do most things that anybody else can do,
Yeah.
You can go rafting or,
Sure.
things like that.
Right.
And just pretty much lead a normal life.
Yeah, the other part with the recovery I was wondering about, and people might wonder, is like the dialysis part, I guess, is stopped then? Your new kidney's trying to work? Is that something they have to play around with every...
I'm not sure exactly how that works. I think as soon as you get the kidney in, it starts functioning,
Yeah.
and you might still have to have a little dialysis.
Sure.
I guess it would depend on
I
the
guess it was
individual.
everyone they have to really monitor
Yeah,
close and see how the
but
blood's
for-
doing.
If you do, I'm sure it's only for maybe a week or two, So I know they do everything they can to get that kidney up and running and functioning as normally as possible, as quickly as possible.
Sure.
I understand that they make you drink, Lake Mead full of water every day.
Oh, I'll bet. Yeah. Kind of flushes out and stuff and keeps
to get
things.
it, to wait, as they call it, wake it up and get it going.
Sure. That makes sense.